What is up, guys? DZ here, and today I'm doing a deck profile and a duel video to accompany this Crobat deck. This is good for a couple reasons. First of all, the deck itself is fairly cheap if you're trying to pick up Pokemon online, or trying to pick a Pokemon in real life. And it's actually surprisingly effective and pretty straightforward. You might have to play it a little bit to get the play style. It's a little bit weird, but that's kind of why I attached the duel videos. So let's take a look at what we're doing. The main lineup, obviously, see we're playing 12 of them, is the bat lineup. The bat lineup is pretty effective in Pokemon. It's fairly popular, but most decks aren't using it as the main engine. They're using it as a supplementary engine, where we're using the full 4-4-4 lineup, which is pretty weird. So basically, you play Zubat. This is the free flight Zubat, which makes it have no retreat when you have no energy, which makes it really easy to start with. And then you evolve it into a Golbat. When Golbat's evolved, you put 20 damage on any Pokemon anywhere. I don't really know what the Yu-Gi-Oh equivalent of this would be. It'd be kind of like if when you summoned a guy, you could discard a monster in your opponent's hand and your opponent took damage for it. That'd be like kind of the equivalent. But seeing Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have a health system is not really a perfect example I can use. And then his actual attack is pretty lackluster. You do 10 damage to all Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field. The only time I really use that is when my opponent has a bunch of bench 60 HP Pokemon. Pyroar, which is the dual video, they play a 60 HP Pokemon, and Fairy decks play 60 HP basic Pokemon. So that's the only time I really do that, so that one more Golbat as well as a Crobat can take out those 60 HP Pokemon. So when Crobat is put into play, it does 30 damage to any Pokemon, just 10 more than Golbat, which means that over the course of 2 turns you're doing 50 damage, which isn't a lot, especially seeing it's an evolution lineup. But basically, not a lot of decks in Pokemon can hit benched Pokemon, and if they do, it's usually for a lot of energy, or the actual attack doesn't do very much, and then it just hits the bench Pokemon. A popular example would be like there's a Manectric EX that does 20 damage to a benched and the active, but these ones you don't have, and then you do
damage, which means that your regular engine can do, only has to clean up kills. They don't have to one-hit KO things at full health. And then Crobat's attack is pretty useless, I would say. It's called Skill Dive, and you can do 30 damage to any Pokemon. It's okay because we're playing a particular field spell that I'll get to in a moment, but in general, you're not using the bats to attack, you're just using them to do a bunch of damage. The main attacker is Wobbuffet. So Wobbuffet is really annoying in Pokemon because it has this ability that negates other abilities while it's face up, except Psychic Pokemon. A lot of Pokemon have abilities. The new Shaman EX is really good. When you play it from your hand, you can draw until you have 6 cards, and the Wobbuffet completely negates that ability. So that's really cool. But the main selling point of Wobbuffet is a Psychic Assault attack, so it does 10 damage and then 10 more damage for all the previous damage counters on that Pokemon. Basically, this means that you have to halfway kill something, and then Wobbuffet can take out the other half. It's for 2 energy, but like I said, we're playing this field spell, Dimension Valley, which makes all Psychic Pokemon have 1 colorless energy less for all their attacks. What this means is that Golbat and Crobat can both use their attacks for completely free, which is really cool. And more importantly, it means that Wobbuffet can use Psychic Assault with only 1 energy. So you can potentially take something out with 1 energy, which is really cool. Our other attacker is Miltank. This is kind of an underused card. We're going to be using the Powerful Friends attack, so if you have any Stage 2 Pokemon on your bench, it does 80 damage. Crobat is a Stage 2 Pokemon, so you can do that, and that really cleans up kills too. With Muscle Band, you're doing 20 more damage, so that means Miltank is doing 100 damage for 1 energy as long as you have a Crobat, and that is a lot of damage, especially for non-EX Pokemon. We're not actually playing EX Pokemon, which is something worth noting, so
when EX Pokemon are taken out, you take 2 prize cards. And seeing we're not playing them, it makes it really hard for your opponent to kill you as long as you have Pokemon in play. They have to kill 2 Pokemon for every 1 Pokemon you're killing, so you can just throw Wobbuffets at them. I find that a lot of the times you're generally you're getting 1 kill with a Crobat and a Wobbuffet, and then you're getting the next kill with that Wobbuffet and either a Miltank or Wobbuffet. So you're using 2 Pokemon to kill their 1 Pokemon, but it's not that big a deal because they're only taking 1 prize card when they kill yours. Other things that are notable, we're playing this card called Super Scoop Up. So you flip a coin, and if heads, you pick up a Pokemon and all the Pokemon attached and all the cards attached to it and put it back in your hand. That's basically to reset our Zubat lineup. And then we have like different versions of it. We have a supporter version in AZ. AZ is a little bit different. It picks up all the Pokemon, but it doesn't pick up any of the energies or items attached to it. That's not super relevant, but it comes up occasionally. And then we're playing Scoop Up Cyclone, which is about to get rotated out, but it's an ace spec, so we can only play 1 of them in our deck. And basically, it's just a Super Scoop Up that you don't have to flip a coin for, so it's guaranteed. Other notable cards, we're playing 2 Ultra Ball, search out our pieces. We're playing 2 Repeat Ball, so Repeat Ball allows you to search for a Pokemon as long as you have another one face up. So this is better than Ultra Ball in some ways because you don't have to discard 2. If you open, like, I think in the gameplay we're going to watch in a second, I used Repeat Ball twice, and both times it's just devastating. I had like 2 Zubats on field with the Golbat in hand, so I could evolve the Golbat, Repeat Ball for a second Golbat, and then evolve that Golbat. Other cards, I think everything's pretty standard. Sycamore to draw 7, that's your basic draw spell. N is pretty basic also. Colress is pretty neat. This is getting rotated out, unfortunately, but you shuffle your hand into your deck and then draw a number of cards equal to the bench Pokemon. You usually have 3 or 4 bench Pokemon, so as long as your opponent has a couple too, that oftentimes is getting you 7, 8, 9 cards. Other stuff, probably the card that not a lot of other decks play is Pokemon Fan Club. You search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon and add them to your hand. This can add Miltank, Wobbuffet, and Zubat. Basically, you just want to open up your games with like all your Zubat in play, or as many as possible. So Pokemon Fan Club makes it so that you actually open up the Zubats. Because what you really want to be doing with multiple Zubats on field is evolving into a Golbat, scooping up to add the Golbat back, and then playing the Golbat over a second Zubat, and then scooping it up again and playing it over the third Zubat. That's a pretty good way to get 60 damage on board. So let's move over and watch the actual gameplay. Okay, so now that we're over by the gameplay, I'll kind of walk you guys through this. It's not as sped up as my gameplay normally is because you guys don't really know how to play Pokemon, so it'll probably be helpful to talk through it. So I'm forced to mulligan twice in my opening, and I end up starting off the game with 2 Zubat, which is pretty good. The only really possible better opening would be 2 Zubat and a Wobbuffet. Unfortunately, I open up 2 Crobat, not really what you want to see because you can't use it for 2 turns, but I have the N to shuffle, I guess I drew a third, shuffle all 3 back, and I draw the Miltank off of that, and I'm able to equip an energy and just pass. Like I said, one of the cool things about Zubat is that if you don't have any energy on it, it has a free retreat, and then not only that, but Golbat and Crobat have no retreat cost ever. Retreat costs are generally how fast or light a Pokemon is, and seeing Crobat is extremely fast and weighs like nothing. It has free retreat costs. That's just a video game translation to the card game. But anyway, that's really cool because that means you can switch your Pokemon in and out as you want without having to detach energy like you would normally. It also means I don't have to play any switches or escape ropes, item cards that switch my Pokemon for me. I don't have to play any of those because my Pokemon do it for me. Miltank and Wobbuffet, I believe, both have 2 retreat costs. Sometimes you get locked into having them on the board, but in general, I usually just like poke a bunch of times and let it die because they're only getting 1 prize card for that. And you can see here, I use the Repeat Ball to add a second Golbat to my hand, and I'm basically just building up damage on the benched Camprupt EX. It's the only EX Pokemon he has in play, and I want to take it out for 2 prizes. Camprupt has a huge retreat cost, so he can't afford to put it in play. And both his attacks the good one takes 4 energy, so even if he got it into play, he wouldn't really be able to kill my Pokemon very fast. And you'll see me use Golbat's attack there to put 10 damage on everything. So in one turn I was able to do 50 damage to a benched Pokemon, which is pretty cool. You'll see here again I get a Crobat to put another 30 damage on the Camprupt, and then I believe I do draw a Repeat Ball to get a second Crobat, and then I'm just really racking up the damage on the Camprupt. Yep, you see the Repeat Ball there. Repeat Ball is incredibly powerful, and it'll only really be trumped by in the latest set, which the sneak peek was just this past weekend. There's a card called Level Ball, and Level Ball will make this deck incredible, although I'll actually probably switch out the Wobbuffet and the Miltank lineup for a Raichu and Pikachu lineup. Basically, Level Ball lets you add a Pokemon with 90 or less HP to your hand, and you don't have to discard, unlike Ultra Ball. In this deck, that will add Zubat and Golbat, not Crobat. Crobat has 130 health. But when I switch over to a Raichu engine, Level Ball will be able to add Zubat, Golbat, Raichu, and Pikachu to my hand. So it's basically like a Rhoda for everything. Pokemon in general has more draw power than actual search power, especially for like Stage 1 and Stage 2 Pokemon. So it's really cool that a card like Level Ball is back in the format. It was rotated out for like a year. It's really cool though because it really helps out the bat lineup, especially because you don't have to use Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball is obviously good, discard 2 to add any Pokemon, but the discard cost kind of sucks when your deck doesn't just build up advantage. And you saw there I got, I believe, back-to-back heads on my Super Scoop Up. So I reset my bat engine entirely, which was really big. Actually, in the game before this one, I resolved all 3 Super Scoop Ups and missed every single one of them. So sometimes that happens, and it sucks that you have to rely on a coin flip. But boy, when you hit them, it's pretty darn good. And yeah, this engine is kind of slow. It's generally paired with faster decks. This one isn't necessarily super fast because it does take a little while to set up your Miltank and your Wobbuffet and all your bats and stuff. But in decks like Raichu and like Landorus EX was a really good pair for bats and Seismitoad, decks that can supplement the engine really well. And normally, if you're just trying to take a bat engine, you do 4 Zubat, 3 Golbat, 2 Crobat. But I don't know, I really like it because the ability to hit bench Pokemon is just really good. Pokemon on the bench are generally safe outside of a card called Lysander, which can just switch them out. But if you can spread the damage on multiple Pokemon, you get a bunch of Pokemon down to really low HP. I mean, you'll see me take out this Camprupt without him ever putting it into play, and that's just incredible. Because I'm able to take 2 prizes without even using like a regular attack. So that's really why you'd use the bat engine, is for the benefit of hitting the bench. Even with Crobat's attack, which can hit any Pokemon for 30, or Golbat's attack, which is okay, but hitting every Pokemon for 10. Yeah, in terms of my opponent's deck, he looks to be playing an anti-meta strategy called Pyroar. That's the lion on his bench. He's not really putting it into play against me because it's not super great. Basically, Pyroar isn't affected by attacks from basic Pokemon. It's a good anti-meta strategy because EX Pokemon are considered basic Pokemon, so against the meta, you actually just don't die to EX Pokemon, and a lot of strategies actually just can't get around a Pyroar. So some Pyroar decks just play 3 Litleo, or 4 Litleo, 4 Pyroar, to make sure that no matter what, you open up with your Litleo. Because in Pokemon, the mulligan is you have to open up with a basic Pokemon, and then if you don't, you shuffle your hand back. And unlike Magic, your opponent draws a card instead of you drawing less cards. So in Magic, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure in Magic, if you mulligan, your opponent, or you just draw 1 less card than you did, where in Pokemon, you're still drawing 7 cards, it's just your opponent is drawing more. This, in general, if you're going first, isn't too big a deal. A card like N, which both players shuffle their hands back into their decks, and then draw cards equal to the number of prize cards they have left. If you open up that, it doesn't really matter how many cards your opponent draws off of your mulligan, because you just shuffle them back and make them draw 6. So that's really powerful to open with. And I don't know, N's getting rotated out of the format, so I don't know if mulliganing will become worse then. I assume it will. The N replacement only works when you have you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, so you can't actually activate it first turn, which is kind of a downer. Right here you're going to see me use a card called Teammates, which is incredibly powerful. If your opponent, or if your Pokemon died last turn, you can search any 2 cards in your deck and add them to your hand. Even though when I first read that card, I thought it was just insane. There's a lot of cards in Pokemon that would be ridiculous in Yu-Gi-Oh! That aren't very good in Pokemon. Teammates is one of them. Not a lot of decks play it, just because it's your supporter for the turn, so you're not drawing any other cards. But in this deck, it's really cool. You saw there I added a Wobbuffet and a Super Cyclone, and it searches out like anything. So like in this deck, you can use it to search out your Ace Spec, which is really important. And usually if you can resolve your Ace Spec, you just win because it's that powerful. And searching it is really good, obviously. But it's also cool in this deck. A lot of times I found myself having like mismatched bats, and then you can just search out the matching ones. So if you have like a Zubat on field and a Golbat on field, and you don't have any other monsters, you can just Teammates to add a Golbat and a Crobat and do 50 more damage, and then 30 with the Crobat attack, which is really cool. So I like Teammates in this deck. I don't think I would play more than one. It's really not a card that you want to play in a lot of decks, just because, like I said, Pokemon is more about draw power and search power. Searching 2 cards is cool and all, but drawing 7 is mostly better in a lot of scenarios. It's just in this particular deck, it's really good being able to search out specific Pokemon instead of just leaving it up to chance. You're going to see me Versus Seeker for a Sycamore there. I thought about using the Colress. Colress, like I said, shuffles back your hand and you draw cards equal to the bench Pokemon. If I would have Colress before I hit my opponent's Pyroar off the bench, I would have drawn 6 cards. Colress might seem worse than Sycamore because Sycamore draws 7, but a lot of times in this deck you don't really want to be discarding because you don't want to waste all your bats. And I think that's the reason I like playing a 4-4-4 lineup of bats instead of a more conventional 4-3-2 or 4-3-3. It's because if one of them gets prized, you're not just like totally screwed. I think in this game one of my Zubats was prized at the beginning. And also, if you discard them with Sycamore, like let's say in this deck, I open up 2 Crobat. While I don't really want to Sycamore them away, I can. And also playing a card which is actually going to seal the deal for the match in a second, called Golden Ash. And Golden Ash allows you to shuffle back 5 Pokemon in your grave back to your deck. And that really helps out. A card called Lysander's Trump Card was banned in Pokemon. One of the first... I don't think it's one of the first, but it's one of the only emergency bans in Pokemon in a long time. Pokemon doesn't have a ban list, they just have set rotation. But Lysander's Trump Card was a supporter that put back all the cards in your and your opponent's graveyards into the deck. That card, it was incredibly good in this type of deck because you could put back all your bats, all your Cyclones, all your Super Scoop Ups, everything, and then just start fresh. But it was a little overpowered in certain strategies, mainly just because you'd shuffle back item cards. Retrieving supporters with Versus Seeker is definitely real, and you can shuffle back Pokemon with Golden Ash, but a card that just allowed you to reset everything for free was definitely a little too powerful. But Golden Ash, pretty good replacement in this deck, just because you can shuffle back Crobats and Golbats and Zubats you discard. I think those are... It's not necessarily a replacement for Lysander's Trump Card by any means, but it is an item card, so you don't have to like waste your whole turn. That was one of the problems with Lysander's Trump Card, was that you wasted your whole turn doing that. So if you didn't have a follow-up, you didn't really do anything that great. And you see I just got some really good draws doing the Crobat to take out a couple things here. And the bats are really cool, just because they really rack up damage, and Wobbuffet in general isn't really playable outside of decks that have attacks that when you attack, you switch out your active with your bench Pokemon to switch in the Wobbuffet just to use its stun ability to negate Pokemon abilities. But its attack is good. It'd be better if it was 20 damage for every damage counter on your opponent's Pokemon. Obviously, that'd be a little ridiculous, but I mean, it'd still be. I don't think it'd be like game breaking. It'd just be good. So at this point, me and my opponent are both on a 1 prize card. I wasn't able to take out any EXs besides the original Camprupt. And my original strategy was taking out the Litleo, but he evolved it to a Pyroar on his bench, so that kind of sucked. But at this point, I am trying to load up my Miltank. That was a weird phrase, but I'm trying to basically just draw 1 energy so that I can equip the energy to the Miltank, versus Seeker for Lysander, switch out the Pyroar, switch in the Miltank, and then attack for game. That's actually what I do end up doing, but I totally forgot that Miltank wouldn't actually hurt the Pyroar in battle because it's a basic Pokemon, which is surprising too, because I've played Pyroar in real life. It was like my first actual deck, so I probably should know what it does. I guess in my head, or I know in my head, I was thinking that Pyroar just stopped EX Pokemon from hurting it, but I don't know. It's pretty embarrassing because I have game, and it would have been pretty bad if I had lost here. So, like, it really comes down to the wire. So at this point, I have to draw, or in my head, I'm just like, I have to draw an energy, and I have game. And my opponent says GG, so I think he has game, but then he doesn't. He's only able to do 120. I thought he might have a card that could do 10 more damage, but he doesn't, so he does 120. So Crobat's at 10. I draw the energy. I'm super excited, because I'm just like, oh, well, I have game. And then I make a really embarrassing misplay that I just talked about, and I'm able to still come back and win it just because of Golden Ash, actually. But it's, I mean, it really comes down to the wire here. I'm literally doing the play, and my opponent's probably wondering if I'm just retarded or something. And in fact, I am. So we're gonna Lysander out the Pyroar, and I'm like super arrogant at this point, because I'm just like, he said GG, and I thought he was talking about his own self, and then I just fuck up like that. So Pyroar takes no damage. At this point, my opponent just has to have a Lysander and a switch, and then he can just kill the Crobat because it's at 10 health, and like he has that energy retrieval, and I'm like, no, it's not good. I was really worried at this point. He has draw power. The Fiery Torch he just activated lets him discard a fire energy to draw 2, kind of like a Destiny draw. Then he has the escape rope, and I'm like freaking out here, because the Crobat's at 10, so like I have to put in the Zubat. Outrage will only do 20, but if he had a Muscle Band, I would have lost right there. Oh no, yeah, it comes down to a coin flip, because the Camprupt does 30 or 60 if you get heads, and he gets a tails. I'm able to draw the Sacred Ash here, so I currently have 1 card left in deck. So all I have to do is put back 3 Golbats, and then any other 2 cards. And then I Sycamore, putting myself down to 1 card in deck, and then I'm able to Golbat. I think I Golbat the Pyroar, and that just kills it. Oh no, I Golbat the Pyroar, and then I'm able to retreat into the Crobat and then attack the Pyroar on the bench, which is game. But should I have won this? I don't know. It's kind of up for debate here. I feel like I played really sloppy there at the end after playing very well for the whole thing, but let me know if you guys like this video, and I will see you later. It was pretty long, but let me know if you have any questions. Goodbye.